Good morning and welcome to the Inside Pass, News 24's live rugby podcast. My name is Nicole from News 24 Sports Desk, and with me in studio is senior sports writer Simnikiwe Xabanisa, who will be taking us through the nuts and bolts of all things South Africa and New Zealand for this weekend. And we'll be catching up with Khanyiso Tshwaku, our man on the ground in Wellington, later. So on the agenda today is the very serious matter of a doubleheader between New Zealand and South Africa. We've got the Springboks and the All Blacks in the morning, kicking us off at 9:05 in Wellington, and then later in the afternoon, our Bok women are in a maiden World Cup quarterfinal against the Black Ferns. That kicks off at 2:00 in Exeter. So, how's it, Sim?
Nicole, new pod, new host.
Yes. So, Rassie responded to that defeat in Eden Park with quite the shake-up in the team selection. It's not only the title championship defence on the line. They also could face their first back-to-back defeat since 2022. Let's begin with a broader question here. Is tomorrow's test in Wellington, is it still about the Rugby Championship title, or is it about defending a World Cup title in 2 years' time?
It's probably a bit of both, because I think at this stage with, 3 more Rugby Championship games left, you can't exactly say you're throwing the towel in. Certainly not by the team that, made its entire 2023 Rugby World Cup campaign based on winning by 1, which basically means you've left it late. So I think it is a bit of both from the perspective of when you look at the selection, it speaks 2 things to me. The first is, like you say, it was a response from Rassie, almost responding to himself in a strange way. When I say responding to himself, I mean last week, that whole naming the team late, it was so reactive. It was so atypical of what Rassie does. Rassie's, to use a cricketing term, is very much a front foot sort of coach. Yeah. And so much of what happened last week was reactive and passive and reliant on, what are the All Blacks going to do? Therefore, we're going to try and sort of counter that. We're going to try and plan for that. This was all about, you know what? Okay, I'll put my trust in the older players.
Yeah.
They didn't do it for me. I now need to put my trust in my instincts. And those instincts, as we've all known since Tony Brown was appointed the attack coach, those instincts are basically we're not going to play the same game to be able, same game we did in 2023 to be able to win in 2027.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, the thing about playing the same game is personnel. If you want to play a different game, you're probably also going to have to change your personnel. So that's why I'm saying he is taking a gamble on his own instincts, how he feels, to see how that goes. And what I really like, I know a lot of people are saying, well, if you want to experiment, you don't want to experiment against the All Blacks because, you could catch a big score. But I quite like that because it then says, I need to give these guys a chance in the biggest possible game that they're going to play in and see what they're capable of. Because tomorrow, some guys, by the end of the game, some guys will have basically made a name for themselves and some guys will have talked themselves out of the equation simply because they couldn't handle the big occasion. And so, yeah, I like that he's backing himself and he's basically giving these guys an opportunity. It's one of those, do I believe these guys will win me a World Cup in 2 years? And if I do believe these guys are going to win me a World Cup in 2 years, then I must play them now.
Yeah.
In an important game, a must-win game. They must do a rescue act. They need to do a rescue act. And so I quite like that kind of thinking. And then obviously if they do win, suddenly it becomes that belief that, then, we're on the right path in terms of what we're trying to do. Therefore, I think it will get rid of this weird sort of, we've been caught between 2 stools, like the old, the DNA and the evolution thing. I think it'll get rid of all of that and just get into a situation where you go, you know what, this is how we're going now. And I really like that.
Yeah, it's almost like it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about putting people in to stand up now and show who they are. That backline, it's, as we're saying, very untested, but it is brimming with skill, with flair. What do you make of it?
Yeah, that's exactly where the intent is, you know. We talk about marrying, there's all this talk about Tony Ball. We always I think us journos, particularly guys like myself actually, we make it seem like it's such a different game to what the Boks would play. It's a game based on what the Boks do. So they've got a pack of forwards that's very much a Bok pack of forwards. And then they've just got these backs that are, the level of intent there. It's literally practically, if you consider yourself an attacking backline player in the Bok team who's part of that squad now, and if you're not in this 23, then it's kind of like, are you sure you're an attacking player? Because anyone who's anyone, Sasha Feinberg and Ngomezulu, Damian Willemse, Canon Moody, these are all generational talents. Cheslin Colby, what do you say about him? Apelele Fasi. And then obviously, Ethan Hooker's incredibly highly rated. Even though obviously he's played two quarters of Test rugby, one against All Black and the other one against the Italians. So it is a backline of intent. The question is, I think the big question obviously is at centre where Damien is playing with Kanan. Just in terms of the wisdom, sort of the conventional wisdom is always that your 12 needs to be a guy that can take it up.
Yeah.
And we seem to be going almost like the old school New Zealand way, where your 12 was also a distributor as well. So if Damien is going to take it up, he's going to take it by using his feet to get over the advantage line. He's not going to use brute strength like the other Damien Dialende to basically, to just basically thump his way over the advantage line. So that's the big question. If those two combine in attack or in defense, suddenly we've got such a game changer in terms of, what the Boks, where the Boks are going over the next 2 years.
So you talk about, that back line is going to, you say that's a forward pack that has to give that backline front foot ball. Now Jasper Wiese has come into the loose trio. Is that a good thing? Is it a great thing? What is he going to do? What is he going to bring to that loose trio now?
Listen, there's nothing that says Bok forward pack more than Jasper Wiese. I think Jasper's measurements are like 189 and like 110 kilos or something like that. If you put that into context, that is just so much power packed into a person that's actually not that tall, if you think about it. So nothing says that more than anything else. And, Jasper, when you've spoken about forward packs, Springbok forward packs in the past, the thing has always been, what's coming, but you don't know how to stop it. Few people, again, sort of epitomize that more than Jasper does, simply because what happens is, Jasper is a one-trick pony, but geez, what a trick. He's going to come straight for you, and pretty much that he's going to get, he's going to run right over you. And so, you couldn't underpin this as a typical Bok forward pack more than by having a guy like Wiese come back. Obviously, he's got his own demons to get over. Him getting suspended because of that headbutt, I believe, cost the Boks so much in terms of opportunity to sort of experiment while winning. To be able to
kind of patching up at the eighth.
We ended up having to do all this patchwork stuff, like you're saying, and it was just actually quite irritating because, if he just, not responded. So he's got a bit to prove, and you hope that, he doesn't go out too much like a man with a point to prove, because if he does it again, then the next question mark becomes, is Jasper a guy you think you can take to the next World Cup?
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to be in that area, because I think from last week, a lot of people are in danger of not playing for the Boks again.
Yeah, it's a massive game for Jasper. So talking about, again, that loose trio as well, it also Jasper's back, so it frees up Khaleesi to be back at number 6 open side.
Yeah.
So the breakdown, I don't know, I reckon it was a common denominator in our defeats at Ellis Park and also last weekend. And I'm now remembering Artie Sevilla's celebration in the closing stages last weekend as well. So they're going to come for us. So it actually doesn't matter what backline you've picked. If that breakdown fails, if we don't get the supremacy there, what do the Boks do there? What is the solution? What do they have to do when it crumbles?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes we get so caught up with with the whole, somebody's got to go steal the ball, somebody's got to go slow it down. There are millions of ways to steal and or slow ball down, but like the most important thing when it comes to the breakdown battle in today's rugby is who gets there the quickest or who reacts the quickest. So once the ball does break down, i.e. somebody got tackled, the most important thing is who does what the quickest next. And we've actually been caught a little short in that. We've had a cleaner too late, which then means, you've got maybe 1 or 2 backs up against their own forwards who were there quicker than ours, and suddenly they're getting counter-rucked off the ball or just getting bullied over the ball. And so it really comes down to something as simple as who's going to react in that sort of 2 to 3 seconds after the ball is broken down the quickest. And so that's the job that, our guys have on their hands.
Yeah.
It's almost like a desire thing more than it is a desire and desperation thing more than it is a skill thing. It's just, how quickly can you get there? Obviously, I mean, it's important what you do once you get there, but one thing we haven't been doing is we've been getting beaten to the punch.
Yeah. Absolutely. So our guy on the ground, Khanyiso Tshwaku, has been patiently waiting to be brought into this conversation.
It's more like our guy in the pub, Rassie.
Yes, we'll get to that later. So, Twax, how's it going?
Good. In this forum.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you too well there.
Oh, I think.
Have we lost him?
Yeah, I think he's lost signal.
Okay, well, while we try and get him back there, let's hop along here. It was a very emotionally charged week last week.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed now? Who's on the up this week? Is it New Zealand? Is it the Boks?
Look, I think with the Boks, it's going to be quite simple. There's no need to sort of work overtime trying to motivate the guys. They know they're desperate to win. They have to win. They have to win to stay in the competition. They have to win almost to prove themselves, right, in terms of the direction they're striking out in. So with them, you don't have to worry. But I think with New Zealand, you have to also concede that they've probably are sitting now with a bit more confidence, because remember they had lost 4 games on the bounce against the Boks, before last weekend, and so maybe I think they've got a bit of confidence, but sometimes that confidence can unintentionally become sort of like, oh yeah, we know how to beat them, which kind of like throws you off a little bit off the edge that you need to have. So I think that's kind of like, you've got a desperate team versus a confident team, and the question then becomes, who kind of like carries that kind of energy into the game the best. Okay,
Chucks, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, excellent. So I was asking you earlier, what conditions can we expect for what would be 7 o'clock in the evening in Wellington tomorrow?
Look, it should be good. I mean, I speak now. Today was actually probably the best day of the 2 weeks I've spent here. The sun was out. It was grey in the morning when the Boks were training, but when the All Blacks started to train afternoon, the sun was out. It was still. There was no wind. I think there won't be any rain predicted. There isn't any rain predicted. But I think the issue is the wind, and the wind has a significant impact at the West Pack Stadium. It is a oval, is a round-shaped ground. The wind swirls, so from a kicking game perspective, the wind can and will have an impact. However, though, from a dry perspective, with this just being sprinkles of overnight rain, the entire day here was dry. Yesterday was dry, so hopefully we get a dry day tomorrow, and that dry day will translate into running rugby for both sides.
Nice. So, rumour has it you had drinks with the man himself, Rassie Erasmus, yesterday, which does explain that early week team announcement all of a sudden. So, firstly, who paid the bill? And more importantly, how is the man?
Look, he didn't show any nerves. Hasn't shown any nerves. But he paid the bill. I think the key part was The key part was that the manner of his team announcement actually shocked Scott Robertson. I mean, I asked him on Monday at the New Zealand High Performance Centre about the team announcement. He was actually quite shocked because he wasn't quite aware that Rassie was going to announce the team on Monday. But as Sim correctly said, I mean, Rassie probably second guessed himself last week. He decided this week New Zealand. Here's my team. Make your plans and let's see what happens. I mean, also the All Blacks are quite spooked by the Boks scrum. Sam Sony did say at yesterday's team announcement press conference that that scrum when they were absolutely barreled in the 61st minute is not going to happen again. I put that to Marlon Palamadva yesterday, probably in a way to just to poke the red flag, and he's like, okay, we'll see, we'll deal with that on the field. See, I was actually straightforward, like, he can say what he wants to say. Such talk will apply on the field. I think what will also hinge, and I know that it sounds quite South African of me to say this, Nika Mashukeli's officiating is going to be very important. Having given myself the opportunity to watch the game 3 times over, the Boks have been rather magnanimous in how Carl Dixon handled the game. But when you look back, he actually had quite the stinker of a fixture. If you look at the last 5 minutes in particular, it literally let the All Blacks have the freedom of Eden Park. That final turnover, there were 3 penalties the Boks should have got. They should have been a yellow card. But Carl Dixon would have summed up the occasion that he wouldn't want to have been the man to rein in on RD's 100th Test match parade and also force a chance for a draw for the Boks at the Eden Park Fortress. The All Black players have been magnanimous regarding the win. They understand that it could have gone either way. I mean, if the Boks had scored their 2 chances in the first 10 minutes of the second half, they would have been chasing the game significantly. But then one of the bigger complaints from the Boks and Riders is that their 13-22 entries are only scored twice. And that's something they can ill afford this weekend. Goes back to the team that is picked. That Rassie wants strike power. He wants guys when they get to the 22, they will make things happen. And the one thing that he has is such a fight Ben Ngomezulu and Mani Lipok are fly-offs who are going to ask New Zealand a kind of questions going wide. And one of the things that actually allowed New Zealand to have so much time on the breakdown was that because of Andre Pollard, they didn't have to actually worry about their defense out wide. They were able to flood the breakdown. Their breakdown is going to be tested now because with the Sasha Feinberg, with the Damian Willems, with the Mani Lipok, they're going to have to look out wide. And with those players out wide, they won't be able to find a place to the breakdown.
Interesting. So, Sim, how many Boks coaches have you had drinks with?
So my entire career, I've struggled to find Boks coaches who particularly liked me. So, but I have had drinks with some of them. I've had drinks with Peter de Villiers, who wasn't a big fan. I have actually had drinks with Rassie and Jacques Nienaber.
It's not a competition.
I'm trying to think who else. Oh, and Jake very early on in his career as Springbok coach. So I've been thereabouts. That's always weird occasions because of the questions you get asked. I think Trucks has come back with a Carl Dixon thing, probably from that conversation because everyone has studied that game to its illogical conclusion. And by the way, Trucks, you watched that thing 3 times. What are you, a sucker for punishment? It's not like it was the result was going to change. Trucks. It was always going to be. Oh, we lost. And so I'm not sure if you did that well. Either that or they don't have enough pubs in New Zealand. Actually, I need to ask you a question about the squad still. Looking at lock, I see Lourdes has now gone back to. I see Rassie has broken up sort of blood brothers too, in Eben Etzebeth and Lourdes de Jager, and he's obviously got Lourdes and Ruan Okier as the locks. My question is a sort of double-edged. The first part is, when last did Lourdes play 4-lock? And then the second part is, do you think he's gotten 2 callers as the 2 locks to, as a way to address the line-out issues?
I think to answer the second part is to address the line-out issues, but to call them a sack of punishment is actually quite true. But also the second part, one of the biggest challenges of the backline out outside of the throwing was how the All Blacks actually always narrowed them the mark of touch, effectively equalized the contest and not giving the Boks an opportunity to have clean ball. That is the first problem. So I think without complaining about the officiating, Erasmus has decided that let me just challenge the line out first and get clean ball, because if there's clean ball, then the ball will take care of itself, because the Boks were unable to get clean ball. Therefore, there wasn't an opportunity to maul. Look, I mean, actually, I was asked this question by Jamie Wall earlier today regarding Eben, and I probably said and actually said to him that one of the things that they need to look out for is allowing the team to grow all together. And one of the key things about Lewis in particular, while he's not one of the younger locks going around, he is a player who has a lot of rugby mileage in him. He's spent a fair part of 2 years without playing test rugby, and there's a certain freshness about him, even though he was understandably nervous when he got onto the field. I think starting may ease off the nerves, and also they've got a towering figure in Ergius Neyman to rely on to come off the bench. So look, I think again it's looking forward, not looking back. Rassie does also realize that with the URC coming up, there's going to be the need for the Sharks to deploy Eben a bit, and Eben playing URC generally leaves injuries. So knowing that if there's a fresh Lut, there's a fresh Ergius, there's a fresh Ruan, the establishment of the locking depth does become something very important to Rassie. But look, I mean, he's still got the front door to look after who's coming. I think South Africa, I don't think South Africa will be shortchanged from a coming perspective, but I think that line-out contest is something that he wants to look after significantly. And also, having 2 5 locks also just eases the burden on a Marlon van der Merwe or Jan-Hendrik Wessels from a throwing perspective, whoever throws when it comes to the second half.
So, Chucks, I'm going to give you one more question before we let you continue with your night in Wellington. So I believe Richie McCaw was with the New Zealanders this week. What dirty tricks is he telling them to do?
Well, probably breakdown. Last week they had Wayne Smith, and Wayne Smith's impact with the high ball, his impact with the disruption of the scrum off was very, very, very clear.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Wayne Smith, being an educated rugby man that he is, found a way that was within the law to ensure that Grant Williams didn't have the best of box kicking days. I suspect that the Boks would have sat back and looked at what the All Blacks did right with regards to the disruption of the box kick, and would have formulated a plan to keep the All Black fringes busy. My slight concern with someone like Kobus Reinach is that he himself is not the best of box kickers, but because of his regularity of sniping around the breakdown, will probably keep the New Zealand French defense far busier. And I think if you look, probably you'll find that a lot of the exiting will probably be done by one Sasha Feinberg or Damien Willemse. But that being said, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of bang that Damien will bring in midfield. Yes, he is a very crafty player from a skills perspective, but one of his underrated aspects is the physicality he brings in midfield. Look, Jordy Barrett is a very physical player, but if he's able to just step off 1 foot and just keep on asking questions of Bowden Barrett's weak shoulder, I think there may be a very interesting contest there in that 10-12 channel.
Okay, thanks a lot for joining us, Trax. We will be catching up with you definitely tomorrow. Have fun.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. So let's turn our attention to the other New Zealand-South Africa match tomorrow. We've got our Bok Women Maiden World Cup quarterfinal, the biggest match in South African women's rugby history. We need a miracle.
We do, and look, I mean, when we went into the tournament, we hadn't won. I think we hadn't won a group game since 2010. That was like a full 15 years ago. So obviously the very first thing we got was to get that win, sorted it out against Brazil. But the problem was Brazil are debutants at this tournament, so you expected to do that. They're also ranked lower than us. So the next big thing sort of in terms of goals was, can we beat Italy, a team we'd never beaten? in 3 attempts, I think it was, but had lost to by only 5 points.
The margins have got smaller and smaller,
Yeah, it was sort of diminishing returns in terms of the winning margin from on their part. And, we promptly did that with a bonus point, and going into the final group game against France, I know we caught a hiding. We were still actually fighting for top of the table, which is insane if you think about, the low base from which the team was coming from in terms of what they were trying to do. But obviously, coming up against New Zealand, now that, history has been made, I think to ask for more history would be a bit greedy. But, try to tell these ladies, they can't do something. And that's pretty much exactly what they do time and time again. They try. And so, to just give a context of what they're up against, New Zealand are the record winners of this tournament. They've won it 6 times in something like, in the 8 times or whatever it's been held. So that's pretty much, this trophy pretty much lives in New Zealand. And so for them to win that's the kind of history they would have to make. And I see that, Swayze has had a bit of a plan regarding that by picking a team that's got a 7-1 split bench, which is insane as well as, inspired. It's weird. You sat there and you thought it'll take a miracle to do it. And then you just thought, there's something else to look forward to here. It's this bench that's just literally going to be emptied out onto the park, just after half time,
Well, it's almost like he's saying, Swayze is like, well, you need a miracle. Let's try and give them a miracle.
Yeah, exactly. I look forward to that game almost specifically because of that, because essentially they've backed their forwards to win them that game. And, the forward play is the women's, the women's team's strongest aspect as things stand. And so, it'll be interesting to see how much longer playing like that will keep them in the game. And then, obviously their defense is going to have to be tip-top simply because the New Zealanders don't play. But I really look forward to it.
No, absolutely. And it's a World Cup knockout after all. Anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we live in hope.
So let's see. I just want to give one last question. It's quite a broader one before we wrap up. But what do you think that the New Zealand women's rugby program has that maybe South Africa can look to catch up to in the future?
Look, I always get bothered by the fact that when we do these comparisons, we don't. It's very simple. A rugby program requires funds. It requires coaching, and those things don't change. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. And I think in South Africa, we still, a bit like transformation sometimes, when you think, black players need different things to white players. It's simple. Players need to be, picked, backed, and given ample opportunity to succeed. And it just never changes. So they've put money behind their team. We need to put money behind ours.
Yeah.
They've put coaching behind their team. We've only started putting coaching behind our team. Look, the encouraging thing to hear about women's rugby in this country is that apparently now every time we sign a sponsor for SA Rugby, that money is kind of like subdivided into all the other teams, not just the Springboks.
Yeah.
So that money goes to, the under-20s, it goes to the Blitzboks team, it goes to the women's team. That's going to go some way towards helping. But another aspect that needs to change here is the Bulls are the only fully professional team in this country. You need to change that. You need to lean on all the other teams, particularly the franchise sides, to be fully professional, like the Bulls as well. If they can do that, then you kind of like, they're playing on an even sort of playing field with their opponents, instead of kind of like, being these amateurs who get wheeled out once every 4 years and then we expect miracles from them. It's not miraculous how it works. It's, that the rules will always be the same. Stump up the funding and do the coaching, scout the players early on, develop them. It doesn't change. A player is a player is a player. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man. We labor under the misapprehension that, somehow that makes a difference. It doesn't. You need to do the same thing. And once you do the same thing, don't worry, the result will look after themselves.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for your insights for this weekend. And thank you for tuning in to listen to us. We hope you enjoy the rugby tomorrow. Take care.